The release of Donkey Kong Bonanza, in addition to the massive sales and continued good selling of the Nintendo Switch 2, shows me that exclusives are more important than ever if you want to have a chance in the modern console industry. Now listen, there's not a lot of options to pick from overall, especially when you start getting down to specialized categories like what Nintendo's doing with the Nintendo Switch 2 and a hybrid platform. But there's been a lot of discussion and talk around if we even need exclusives anymore. Everyone's becoming multiply. Everybody wants to put things on everything. And you know what? At the end of the day, more people playing games is great. More people having access to games is fantastic. And I am not against that per se. Like, if any company wants to have their own prerogative or own deal to where they put games on X or Y or Z platform, I'm all for that overall. But what I'm saying in terms of the historical context overall and what people grew up with, what I grew up with back in the day when it comes to the NES or when it comes to the Sega Genesis, Master System, all the different systems, PlayStation 1, all of that, there was a certain aura and reason why exclusives existed, and that was to push the hardware in addition to having the devs focus solely on what they can do on that platform in order to push that platform out to more people and even take advantage of things that you might overlook if you had to port things over to a bunch of different platforms. You'd spend that extra amount of time actually fine-tuning and honing things down because your sole focus is on that one platform. Donkey Kong Bonanza just dropped 91 average on Metacritic overall, getting people to rush out there and get restocks that are happening at Best Buy and other places. But even with the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, I think that Mario Kart World, that was a massive exclusive that pushed people out there to go get it. But even if you look at the backlog of what Nintendo had with the Nintendo Switch 1 games and being able to play the Nintendo Switch 1 games at higher resolution and higher frame rates overall, but really just playing the games better, that opened up a Pandora's box of people that says, wow, I can easily access all of these games that I already have, a lot of them being exclusive to the Nintendo Switch 1, and play them even better. And it's an instant sign of, okay, this is going to push the system to the next level, or it's going to push more people to pick one up because now I can play The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom at a super solid frame rate in addition to looking better than ever with updates that Nintendo did. So I think personally, you look at what's happening right now with the Nintendo Switch 2, it's a very unique system. These portable PCs or these other devices that come out, they're not uniquely built systems specifically for a platform. There are PCs that they try to adapt into a handheld thing, and that's nothing wrong with that. It's fine if you want that, if people want that, that's clear, that's okay. I'm not against that once again. But at the same time, without the exclusive software, without the, I would say, hype surrounding that, the Nintendo Directs, the certain things that people can kind of build a community around, it becomes something that doesn't have quite as an exciting aura about it. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Nintendo Switch 2 is currently absolutely crushing every single portable PC in sales. There is a certain level to this. Once again, not trying to take away games or people shouldn't have access to stuff, but there's a certain level in terms of the community and in terms of what people are excited about to be able to play when it comes to a platform that exclusives deliver, that drives the hype, that drives more people to pick that up and to create a sense of community within, hey, we're getting these awesome exclusive games that really take advantage of this system overall, where the developers are solely focused on getting something done. Now, that's not to say that you can't have multi-platform development and still have incredible games that take advantage of each platform. I just think that when you're solely focused on something, you can kind of truly hone in and get everything that you need to get done right, in addition to kind of building up in terms of what you want to do and what your focus is for that platform. And of course, Nintendo wants to sell Nintendo Switch 2 systems, so the best way to sell Nintendo Switch 2 systems is to have irresistible software that people can only get on there. So that's just also a very simple and basic concept as well. So what do you guys think about this when it comes to it? I'm probably going to have another video talking more about how the exclusives kind of shape different things, but for right now, with the launch of Donkey Kong Bonanza, the 91 average on Metacritic so far, people rushing out there to go get the restocks that are at Best Buy or at Walmart or different places that are popping up, and the game probably going to do incredibly well. I think that there's definitely a market for people who want this type of system and want this type of, I would say, excitement surrounding it, with the company solely basing their Nintendo Directs and exclusives to kind of push the hardware. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. But before we get into the next topic, please make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are someone new, hit that like button, and click that notification bell to get my vids as soon as they drop, and let me know what your favorite exclusive is for the Nintendo Switch 1 or the Nintendo Switch 2 so far. Now let's go ahead and jump into the next topic, and we're going to be discussing the situation that's going on with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and how a leaker claims that Retro Studios is going right into Metroid Prime 5 as soon as Prime 4 finishes up. So Mr. Reese Kiwi Talks Reality apparently has some connections to Retro Studios, and in a recent discussion that he had, he states that Retro Studios is going straight into the work and development of Metroid Prime 5 as soon as Prime 4 is wrapped up. Here's what he had to say recently. Quote, "I'm seeing people taking Nintendo's comments about there being 2D and 3D Donkey Kong going forward as Retro continuing with 2D Donkey Kong. No, that's copium. It's unlikely Retro returns to Donkey Kong again. There were unique circumstances at play to allow them to make the DK games. Retro's original existence was to make games for Nintendo that they themselves couldn't make. There are so many internal teams that can make a 2D Donkey Kong game. There is no one other than Retro that can make a Metroid Prime game at the caliber they make them. I am not saying that they are going to become the Metroid Prime studio. I imagine after Prime 4, they will do Prime 5 and then move on to another IP due to franchise fatigue. I'm also not saying that Retro aren't capable. They certainly are, and Tropical Freeze is easily a top 5 2D platformer ever made, but we are in a different era of Nintendo and a different era of Retro. I just want to keep everyone's expectations in check here." So let's talk about that, because there was some pretty crazy or extra circumstances that caused Retro Studios to make the Donkey Kong games. And I understand that some people are saying, oh, wow, they can go right back to Donkey Kong. And yes, with the, I would say, graphical prowess that the Nintendo Switch has, and Retro Studios, I would say, unique abilities in terms of being able to have some atmosphere and what they do in a 2D game, absolutely, they could make an incredible 2D game, especially with the 2D levels that are in Donkey Kong Bonanza. Imagine that when it comes to them focusing on the Nintendo Switch 2 hardware and doing that, because really, they didn't really utilize the Nintendo Switch 1. That was not fully utilized. That was essentially just a port from the Wii U, which was an extension from the Wii overall. So there really hasn't been anything truly dedicated when it comes down to it. And I think that they could make something beautiful, but I do think that Mr. Kiwi Talks is right here. Even if he isn't correct with them going straight to Metroid Prime 5 and maybe it's something else, I do think that there are a number of teams within Nintendo that can make a great Donkey Kong 2D platformer, just like Nintendo had someone that can make a great 3D Donkey Kong platformer with Donkey Kong Bonanza. That game is incredible. Easily one of the best 3D platformers that Nintendo has ever made. So I do feel that, yes, some other internal team at Nintendo, a smaller team, can probably handle a 2D Donkey Kong game and make it really fun and unique and whimsical and all the things that we love about Donkey Kong, just like they took the new Super Mario Bros. Series, kind of scrapped that a bit, and then went into Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and it was incredible back in 2023. So I fully expect somebody else, maybe an upstart or a different type of team at Nintendo, to handle the next 2D Donkey Kong game. While yes, I feel that Retro Studios should absolutely jump right in to Metroid Prime 5 because of how long game development takes and how long things are. People are going to want that next Metroid experience when it comes to a Prime game that's actually built specifically for the Nintendo Switch 2. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is a Switch 1 game that is essentially upscaled for the Nintendo Switch 2. It is not the same thing as Donkey Kong Bonanza, which started out as a Switch 1 game, then they realized that we can't do what we want to do for this game with the Nintendo Switch 1, and then moved it over to an exclusive for Switch 2. Same thing with Mario Kart World. Started out as Switch 1, we can't do what we actually want to do with this hardware, it's not going to work, let's make it a Switch 2 game. I think that with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, they got everything they wanted to do on the Switch 1, and then now it's time to move on to the Switch 2 hardware and make it from there. And we saw how long it took when it comes to Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. You don't want to have a 10-year Metroid game, or your next big new IP is going to take so long. So I think that, yes, they're going to get started right away, probably on the next Metroid Prime game, and I think that would be fine too, because in 5 years or 4 years or however long it takes them to make that next Metroid game, people will be excited because it's been some time since Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and plus that was a Switch 1 game upscaled for Switch 2. Now we actually have a Metroid Prime game built specifically for the Nintendo Switch 2, and in between that time period, we'll probably get like a 2D Metroid game as well from Mercury Steam, the Metroid Dread developers. So we'll probably get that as a buffer in between. So what do you guys think overall when it comes to what Mr. Kiwi Talks had to say here about Retro Studios, Donkey Kong, and Metroid Prime? Let me know in the comment section below. But now we're going to move on to another pretty interesting topic here, because we've got another actual physical cartridge game coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. So is this a sign of things changing overall? So recently there was a new Sonic Racing CrossWorlds trailer that showed off some customization that they have in the game. They also talked about the situation with the Nintendo Switch 2, the pricing, and kind of what's happening with the release date. So overall, you're going to be able to get the game digitally holiday 2025, but the physical edition is going to be early 2026 for the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. But the good news is that it's actually on a 64GB cartridge, and they're also offering a $10 upgrade path as well with the Nintendo Switch 1 cartridge. So this is something that Sega was criticized quite a bit for when it comes to all of their Nintendo Switch 2 games, or at least some of them. They were criticized on not actually having a physical cartridge. It was game key cards. They were criticized for not offering an upgrade path for the Sonic Cross Shadow game as well. So now they're actually kind of rectifying some of these things as they get going with the Nintendo Switch 2, and I'm hoping this is a sign of things to come for Sega, because there's still a lot of great games that people want to play on the Nintendo Switch 2 from Sega, and I think Sega knows that the Switch 2 is going to be a big part of their business in the future, considering the Japanese domination that the Nintendo Switch 2 is having right now. So yes, having Sonic Racing CrossWorlds on a cartridge, definitely a good thing. Having a $10 upgrade path for the Switch 1 version, absolutely a good thing as well. So very good to see that. Sonic Racing CrossWorlds looks really fun. It looks like it's going to have a ton of content and different things to do, and it could be a lot of fun for people that love the Sonic or Sega worlds overall and kind of what's happening. I mean, they detailed some digital deluxe editions and standard editions and the prices, and they are kind of up there, but I do think that overall the game is probably going to be very fun for people. There's going to be a lot of stuff to do, and the fans overall will like the game. I think that there's enough content, there's enough, I would say, good gameplay moments in here. The controls are pretty good from what I've seen so far and what people have been saying. So I do feel that Sonic Racing CrossWorlds will be a good game overall, and this is definitely positive news when it comes to the cartridge situation. But I do also want to talk about it a little bit more, because I think that now that Sega is getting this with Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, it should promote some of the other games that are coming out with that. If there is a Metaphor ReFantazio Retold edition or something like that, hopefully that is on a 64GB cartridge on the Nintendo Switch 2. Recently, Sega announced that Metaphor ReFantazio has crossed 2 million units sold, and that's across the PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. I would think that there's probably a good chunk of people that didn't buy that game because they were waiting or anticipating a Nintendo Switch 2 version, because that game feels like it's like built for the system overall with the Switch 2, considering the amount of talking and dialogue and different stuff that you can do in that game. I think a Switch 2 version would be fantastic. I feel that people are waiting for that, so if Sega can do a cartridge for that game as well, that would be great. You also have other big Yakuza games that are going to be coming out in the future, or other titles from Sega, new Persona game. Hopefully this leads to them not only having the day and date support with the Nintendo Switch 2, but then also having that on real 64GB cartridges and kind of leaving the game key cards in the past when it comes down to it. There is a time and place to use those. For example, if you're someone who just simply can't afford the cartridge as a developer, okay, I get that. Or if the game is bigger than the 64GB that's offered, then obviously a game key card or simply just getting the game digital, that is something that I feel is like, okay, yeah, no problem. But yeah, a game like Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, Metaphor ReFantazio, Sega's titles, old school stuff that people are looking forward to playing, I think that those should definitely be on cartridge if it fits within the limit from a big publisher like Sega. So I do think it's just going to take a little bit of time here, and more of these big publishers, as the Switch 2 actually gains an install base and all of that, they can kind of slowly kind of get things going and move it over to those cartridges, and that becomes more of the norm than it is right now at this point. So hopefully this brings some more inspiration overall, or the plans were already set for some of these other games. I know for me personally, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, I'm hoping that one is actually on the physical cartridge. I'm getting it regardless, because I think that game is really important overall to when it comes to Square Enix and how they view Final Fantasy on the Nintendo Switch 2. But yeah, I think that that's going to be a big one. Elden Ring. There's more Japanese RPGs, Japanese titles from some of these publishers that absolutely should be following in the same footsteps here. So hopefully we get that going forward, and it's going to be very interesting to see exactly how everything is going to work out. But what do you guys think about it when it comes to Sonic Racing CrossWorlds in addition to Retro Studios and what we talked about with the Nintendo Switch 2 exclusives? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.